Now, I'm very excited to welcome back one of my longest and most knowledgeable guests when it comes to handicapping college basketball to the odds breakers, and my partner in crime on Better Odds Sports Betting, Kyle Hunter from HunterSportsPicks.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Hunter Picks. Well, Kyle, here we are, my man. We always talk about it. The madness is here. How you been?
Man, this is a busy week. I love this time of the year. Like I said, Selection Sunday. I'm like a kid in a candy store. Looking forward to the game starting. Busy week. Got a lot to get accomplished here this week, and we're going to break down a lot of games here today.
Yeah, we certainly are. It is a lot locked and loaded, man. This bracket is ready to roll, and there is lots to talk about. And of course, there's lots of other tournaments going on as well. As Kyle very familiar with these smaller tournaments, sometimes both of us find some more value in those tournaments as well. We're going to try to keep this one sticking to March Madness for the NCAA tournament as much as possible. But hey, maybe at the end we can have some time to talk a little bit about the smaller tournaments. Kyle, here we are. We have a bracket. I don't know if you filled one out yet, but I think you always like to wait until the end, and I'm actually waiting as well. I want to get through all the cap, and I did a quick one just to kind of line things up, but I'll have my real Final Four done by Thursday morning. But how do you think the committee did from a seeding perspective in general?
Yeah, I mean, you can always have some qualms. I think Texas A&M got hosed. Yeah, I was shocked they were a 7. Thought they'd be a 5 or possibly even a 4. It seems like the committee doesn't weigh recency and how you do in a conference tournament as much as what you would think. That was one that I thought was a strange one. I'm a bit surprised that Duke only got a 5 seed, especially them being Duke. I think that Xavier getting a 3 was surprising to me. You know, Xavier hasn't played great. I know they made it to the finals in the Big East tournament, but in general, I didn't think they did terribly. This is not one of the worst jobs I've seen by selection committees or anything like that. Rutgers, as far as being in or out, I'm surprised they weren't in. But let's be honest, they kind of have themselves to blame too, the way they played over the last month of the season. When they blew that 10-point lead to Minnesota with a minute left, that was probably what sealed the deal for them.
It's an ugly loss right there, my friend. Losing to Minnesota, it doesn't help you get in the tournament. It's weird. Both our teams didn't make it, and it's funny. You have 8 Big Ten teams. Your Ohio State Buckeyes, my Wisconsin Badgers didn't make it, and it's kind of, if you asked me before the season if neither of these teams would make it, I've been pretty surprised. I actually expected a lot more from Ohio State, and lo and behold, the very end they make a decent little run, kind of showing that they're way better than the 12 games they lost in a row in Big Ten play. So I thought that was a little strange. But sticking to the subject here, yeah, I thought Rutgers kind of got screwed if you compare them to Nevada or some of those teams that got in. West Virginia, I'm not super impressed with. Totally understand like the NC State, but I thought the NC State probably should have been a play-in game. And I think they're in because the ACC was just hurting so bad. They just wanted more representation from that conference. I almost felt that they added another one from the Mountain West because they were ranked higher than the ACC. So I thought that was a little strange. But you know what? Just like you said, Rutgers had their chances. When there's 64 teams to 68 teams, when you count the play-ins, you don't really have a leg to stand on, Yeah. In football, it's like, okay, we can argue about the final 4 teams a little bit. There's some people that might have kind of gotten screwed. But if you're like the 64th team or something, it's like, first of all, man, you're not the best and you shouldn't be playing for the best. So I understand that part of it as well. I am surprised to see Xavier a 3 seed, UConn a 4 seed, and Creighton a 6 seed. It's just completely backwards to me from the power of these teams, and it absolutely made no sense. So I was a little surprised at that. It's like a lot of years you think that they don't really care so much about the tournament, but they did care about the Big East tournament. Marquette was the healthiest team, and so they're lo and behold the 2 seed here, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, Marquette, they kind of were against the odds all year. I think they were picked, 9th in the Big East or something preseason. Shaka Smart's done a great job. I know he didn't have a great tenure at Texas, but otherwise he's been a very good head coach, and props to them for a nice run. Overall, I think, we're always going to have somebody upset about something on Selection Sunday. But overall, I think it was a fine job. They're always going to pit some of those mid majors against each other, too. I'm not a big fan of that, trying to knock out some of those smaller teams early on. But here we are. We've got a nice bracket here. No, I haven't filled out my bracket yet. I'm probably going to wait till Wednesday night to do that, Kiev. I always put precedence on trying to figure out what I'm going to take as far as bets, and then figure out the bracket second of all. And I don't call myself some kind of bracket expert or anything. I just kind of do it for fun. And, obviously if I do well, everybody in the family is like, oh, well, you should do well. Of course you follow this all the time. And otherwise, it is what it is. I'm more worried about the bets from game to game than I am from the bracket. But the bracket's always fun too. There's so much about March Madness. Kiev, I think I've probably told you this before. This is my favorite sporting event of the year. I love March Madness a lot, and excited to break it down here today.
It is my favorite sporting event as well. I totally agree. Been loving it since the 90s. And, it's fun. Now we have our kids fill out brackets, and I'm sure Dane's going to fill one out, and Jordan on your side of the fence. Maybe we have to get them into our bracket challenge here at the Odds Breakers together and have them face off a little bit. Yes, we will definitely do it. Well, that's awesome. So can't wait for that. Let's get back to the NCAA tournament itself and talk about what you like to talk about or specialize in is a lot of these systems, and sometimes these systems work. And let's just look at the venues itself. Is there any numbers on these early game venues that make any sense from a totals perspective?
Well, Kiev, knowing me as well as you do, when I saw the locations, I immediately was looking down through the locations and going, okay, let's see. Hopefully there's some really big under venue here. I was really disappointed when I was looking through the numbers here, hoping for a, Honda Center in Anaheim, or a Enterprise Arena in St. Louis, or Madison Square Garden. Now, Madison Square Garden does come up next week, and we will point out that Madison Square Garden unders have been absolute money in the bank, especially first half unders there. So keep that in mind for the Sweet 16 round coming up next week. The only one that even when running a query on stood out at all was the BJCC Arena, the Birmingham location, 26-17 to the under. A decent amount of these games have gone under by quite a few points. So I think you could at least say that this is a venue that would lean to the under some. And we will talk about some games here that will be played there in Birmingham. But 26-17 is not a big enough sample for me to be wildly excited about taking it. It's not a situation where I'm just going to be blindly betting these unders. It's just something, that you would want to consider as part of your handicap.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where you have in the South bracket a lot of these Thursday games, and as well as the Midwest bracket. A couple of those games will be played in Birmingham, Alabama. And so I always like to look at bracket pictures with the locations as well. I think it's real important for your handicap. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the Madison Square Garden time as well. What about any systems or trends based on the first round in general, Kyle?
All right, so let's look at some college basketball NCAA tournament. Some of these are not specific to the first round. Some of them are specific to the first round. So let's go with the first round one first, or I'll say first weekend, because when you're listening to this, you're probably going to be thinking about both the round of 64, the round of 32 as well. This is teams with a turnover advantage. So I'm going to try to repeat this a couple times because it's a little bit complex. You're backing a team who averages 11.4 turnovers per game or fewer, who's playing against a team that has 11.5 turnovers per game or more. It's 171 and 116, which is almost 60%, 59.6% dating back to 2011. Now, Kiev, if you break this down a little bit more and filter it to underdogs only, so you're backing an underdog, it's 80 and 43 against the spread. So you want a dog that takes care of the basketball versus a favorite that doesn't take care of the basketball very well. I think this makes sense to me. We know how much turnovers matter. This is it's free possessions for the other team. You got to be super efficient. You got to be very good at shooting if you're going to turn the ball over that many times. So in the first couple of rounds of the NCAA tournament, backing those teams who take good care of the basketball against teams who don't take as good a care of the basketball has been a really good winning angle. It's actually won too if you go forward in the NCAA tournament more as well, but it's the highest at the beginning, which I think does make sense because there are some teams early on, especially some of those lower ranked teams that play in the smaller conferences. Some of them can be pretty bad with ball handling. And, sometimes we get these major conference teams that are a bit sloppy with the basketball, but they can get away with it because of their athleticism. But then those are the teams that are ripe for being upset by Cinderella. So we'll see if we can find some of those Cinderella teams, but teams with the turnover advantage, definitely something to keep an eye on. I'm going to go right into the second one. Just being a contrarian, Kiev, this is where some people are going to tell you that what the public bets doesn't matter. I think it does matter in the NCAA tournament. I absolutely do. I'm not one of those guys that say, pros versus Joes, and that's what I want to bet everything on all throughout the course of the year. I think that's really overrated looking at the bet percentages. You have to argue whether those are actually completely accurate is also something, because sometimes those are delayed. Sometimes you might not be getting the most accurate data, but it is pretty easy to tell who the public likes in several of these games without even the betting percentages telling you that. And in these spots, I'm going to give you one first to start with. Just a real simple one. Team receiving 40% of the bets or fewer, 288 and 241. That's 54.4% against the spread. It's a little over 55% in the round of 64. So it's just a little bit higher in the round of 64 than it has been for the tournament overall. I know this is not the highest percentage. It's not some 80% angle or anything fantastic like that. But if you give me something that over the span of 15 years has been 54.4% in a large sample size, it's something that I at least want to pay attention to. We don't want to be on the same side as everybody else betting here because, to be frank, the public is not very good at betting the NCAA tournament. A lot of people lose betting the NCAA tournament. So these are a lot of people who didn't pay attention to college basketball throughout the course of the season. And now all at once they, jump into it, dive headfirst into betting college basketball in March when they didn't follow teams throughout the course of the season. Now, if you're tuned into the odds breakers, if you've tuned into Better Odds, sports betting, then I assume you've been paying attention throughout the course of the season. That doesn't really apply to you. But it's good to know that there are a lot of those bettors out there this time of the year. So Kiev, the final one, and I'll just roll right through these here.
Sure.
Fading the trendy underdog. We've talked about this one in the past because it's again fading the public, but it's a little bit more specific here. Backing a favorite of 10 points or fewer when they're receiving less than half the bets. 150 and 120, which is 55.3% since 2006. Also note, if you filter down by betting on teams who have covered the spread in 50% or lower of their games on the year, the angle jumps to 60.1% since 2006. I would say the reason for that is those other teams are getting a bit too overvalued because they've been covering the number so much throughout the course of the season. More often than not in the NCAA tournament, you see teams who actually weren't great at covering the number in the regular season have covered pretty well in the NCAA tournament because, if anything, they were undervalued. So in this case, those trendy underdogs can be super dangerous. You know that. This angle did not do well last year. So this will something that I want to kind of keep an eye on going forward because this angle had been amazing. Last year, it didn't do well. Some of those trendy underdogs did cash. So let's see what happens here this year. But I tend to think that the angle dating back to 2006 is probably still a pretty good one.
Trendy underdogs. I can just think of 5-12 upsets that are pretty trendy that tend to pop in. I think Oral Roberts might get a few bets this year against Duke. So we'll get into that as well. Great stuff, man. That is some awesome information to know coming into this tournament. Anything that doesn't get 40% of the bets, be careful what you're doing there. You want to be on some of those teams that aren't trendy, and you want to be fading the public in these certain situations too. And a lot of them get their information from just watching the analysts on TV and things like that, and they're filling their bracket out. But doesn't mean that the spread is the same information as the bracket itself. So that's very important to look at. So let's get into a few games now. Before we get into the NCAA tournament itself, there's a few play-in games. There's a couple on Tuesday, a couple on Wednesday. Is there anything there that you like? I have one in case you don't.
I haven't bet any of these yet. I tend to not bet a lot on these play-in games. I think they can be a bit inconsistent. There's one that I do like aside some here, and that's Texas Southern. I don't know if that's the same game as what you were looking at or not, but Texas Southern out of the SWAC, a team that was picked to win the SWAC over the course of the season. They did not play well. They get hot at the end of the year, run through the SWAC tournament, win the SWAC conference tournament. I think they have been in this situation so many times before, playing in Dayton against a Fairleigh Dickinson team that had played a really, really weak schedule. Texas Southern, they played a really brutal schedule. I think they had the top 5 non-conference strength of schedule. I think Texas Southern -2. It looks like the prevailing number there. I think that's a pretty good look there for, I believe that one's on Wednesday night. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, I believe it is. And what's funny about Fairleigh Dickinson, they don't deserve to be in the tournament, Kyle, at all. I mean, Merrimack beat them in their tournament. Merrimack was better, but Merrimack isn't allowed in because of the stupid rule. I think, what was it, 5 years they're supposed to be in Division One? Is that it?
And I think this was the last year they weren't eligible, which is just kind of a shame because they built up the team, then weren't able to play in it. They won the regular season and won the tournament, and they can't play in it. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, the Northeast Conference is bad, and it's just not good at all. And Fairleigh Dickinson there lost to some really bad teams. Number 342nd St. Francis, number 330 Sacred Heart, number 343 Central Connecticut Wagner, number 335 Stonehill. I mean, there's nothing there. And it's funny you mentioned Texas Southern does go to Dayton a lot and play this play-in tournament. Come to think of it, that's actually a good one, man. I'm going to possibly be on that one with you. One I grabbed was I just went to Old Faithful, Arizona State here. I think Arizona State is playing a Nevada team that, like I said, doesn't have a lot of business being in the tournament. Is that why I bet them? Not necessarily just that, but I think they have some matchup advantages over Nevada as well. They have a much better defense and a much harder schedule. If you look at some of the neutral courts that ASU played against some teams early, I like how they beat Michigan State or Michigan. I like how they beat Creighton on a neutral court. I like how they beat VCU. So they have a nice tournament run. They did beat USC, which I thought was somewhat impressive. So I feel like they're kind of coming in a little bit hot right now. While Nevada, if you remember, they were terrible on the road. Sure, they got some of the big ones in conference in bad spots on some of these teams. I thought San Diego State wasn't in a good spot when they played Boise State and a couple of their wins, but everything else was a pretty bad loss. And they have no big wins in the non-conference. Only Sam Houston State was their best win in the non-conference, losing to Oregon, losing to Loyola Marymount, losing to Kansas State. So I like ASU. I took them on the money line at -125 because it could be a close game, but I would bet that one again.
Yeah, the only problem I have with Arizona State is they're pretty inconsistent. I don't know that I'm that high on Bobby Hurley as a coach. Having said that, I would bet them if given those two choices because I think Nevada is playing pretty poorly here to end the season. I'm surprised they were able to back into the tournament, having lost to Wyoming on the road, UNLV at home, and then San Jose State on a neutral in the last 3 games. There's nothing here recently from Nevada that would make me want to bet them in this game. Arizona State is their upside is definitely there. They beat some good teams this year. If they come out with their A game, they're going to win this game, even if Nevada brings their A game, I think, because I think their upside is certainly higher. Arizona State, I think it's interesting that Arizona State's probably in this tournament because they made that shot from behind half court. I mean, I assume they would not be in. I think it was
Well,
Cambridge hit that shot.
yeah, it was against Arizona,
Yeah.
and it was an amazing shot. NAU just did that before, like a day or two before that, or whatever it was. Too, it was just really crazy. The fireworks coming out of Arizona like that. But what I will say is that maybe that shot was lucky, but they're that close to beating Arizona too.
Right.
You got to give them, the benefit of the doubt. When it comes to that, they do have some a couple close losses. So if you want to say the USC loss on March 4th was close. It was an away game, 3-point loss. They have a couple other ones throughout the season too. So they lost to Texas Southern back in November. So there you go, your Texas Southern team. There you go. Be on ASU and Texas Southern for the play-ins. Let's move to the tournament then, and we'll start right away. And we can there's 16 games here. We're going to talk about 14 because we don't know about the play-ins, and we're just going to briefly touch on them. And we can pass if we decide. There's sometimes not enough information on some of these injuries and stuff like that. But we'll start with West Virginia versus Maryland. Maryland's about +2.5. The total is 138.5, and this is played in Birmingham, Alabama. So this might fit your trend a little bit. I think this is going to be a really good game, to be honest with you. I even though like these teams are like 8 and 9, not super impressive, I think Maryland is better than what they performed in the Big Ten. They were kind of bad away, really good at home, but they have some more advantages from mid-range and deep. The Terps rank 61st in adjusted 3-point percentage, while West Virginia ranks 96th defending it. I think they can possibly hit some threes. Neither team's all that good inside, but Maryland's going to have the rebounding advantage here. West Virginia, they're not the typical Huggins team. He used to be press Virginia for all those years, Kyle. That's kind of died off. It almost feels like when watching this team, it's not nearly as intense as what they used to do under Coach Bob Huggins there. So what they are doing is they're the ones getting sloppy and turning the ball over. So I'm close to a Maryland bet on this, but I did take the under. And I believe I got it at a better number at about around the 140 range, Kyle. So I still lean to the under. And hey, the fact that it's in Birmingham and you just brought up that trend kind of backs me up a little bit.
Yeah, this game, I think it all depends on which Maryland team shows up. You and I both use Haslametrics quite a bit. Haslametrics has Maryland as the number 363 team in consistency, which is there's 363 teams in the country. So who knows which team's going to show up here. I don't like betting on teams like that very much because, if they get run out of the gym, it's not going to surprise me. If they win easily, it's not going to surprise me. I think there's a lot of different things could happen in a game like this. I will say Maryland fits the angle that I talked about at the beginning here about less turnovers. So you were talking about how West Virginia does turn the ball over quite a bit. Maryland fits. They are an underdog who commits less turnovers than the opponent. And that one was 80-43 against the spread. Now, I do want to say, I think some context is important. There's not very many teams in the Big Ten that really force a bunch of turnovers. And in the Big 12, there's several teams that are very good at forcing turnovers. So I don't think Maryland has really faced many teams that can force turnovers as much as West Virginia. So we'll see if they can be as good at taking care of the basketball as what they've been throughout the course of the season, playing against Big Ten defenses who are not particularly aggressive, especially in the full court. Now, West Virginia still doesn't press the way they used to, but they're still an aggressive team that fouls a lot because they trap a lot. They're always going to try to get steals, even if it's in the half court. I think it's fair for us both to say we're both being Big Ten guys, like you said. Our teams are not in the tournament, but both of us would say the Big 12 is a lot better than the Big Ten. There's no doubt about that. I think the line makes sense to me here. The under was my lean as well, and it has gone down in that direction. So I agree with you. I mean, it's starting to get down to a point where it's hard to continue to recommend betting it because, it's gone down a couple points. I think if I were forced to bet a side here, I'd probably bet West Virginia in this one, Kiev, but I don't feel very confident about it.
Yeah, it did go down 3, 4 points. I did take it at 140.5. Now looking back, and it's at 137.5. So maybe look at a first half under in this situation, which trend really good in the NCAA tournament as well. So, keep that in mind. Yeah, it's almost up to your current trend of less than 40% of the bets too. So if we wait this one out, this might fit that bill as well, Kyle.
It might.
All right, let's move on to the next game. And we have Furman versus Virginia. And Virginia's minus 5.5. The total in this game, and let me pull up my Betfred odds, make sure we're all lined up here, is 132. It looks like on Betfred, 132. So that thing went down slightly as well. What are your thoughts on this one?
Shout out to Steve over in the chat saying his two favorite guys, and then saying, can Furman make a little run? A great segue there by Steve right into this game. Furman, I think Furman's a good team, Kiev. I do. I think they're a good mid-major team that is a dangerous matchup. If you were going to pick out a team to play as a Furman too that you might have a chance against, I think Virginia is a pretty good one to pick. This is a Virginia team that doesn't have a ton of firepower on offense. They're a good defense. One injury that's kind of gone under the radar is Ben Vanderplas being out for Virginia. I believe he has a hand injury. I think he broke his hand. So Vanderplas was a good offensive player. Now he's out. Ryan Dunn's been playing more. Ryan Dunn's a better defender, not as good on offense. This is a Furman team that's really weak on pick and roll defense, pick and roll ball screen. But fortunately for them, Virginia doesn't do that hardly at all. They're 10% plays, which is about as low as anybody on pick and roll ball screen action. I think Jalen Slauson, the SoCon Player of the Year, is the key to this game in general. His ability to stretch the floor from the front court could bother the pack line defense a bit here in a game like this. This is an absolute pace war. Furman wants to run. Virginia wants to play slowly. As far as the bet in this game, I'm seeing 5.5 as a line. I think it's interesting because usually you'd be getting more than 5.5 points in a 4 versus 13 type of game. But everybody knows Furman's pretty good. I think Virginia, if anything, might have been overseeded a bit so far. I thought it was interesting that Virginia got a 4 seed and then Duke got a 5 seed. Surprising. But this Virginia team, well coached by Bennett for sure. I think Furman's well coached as well. This is a game where I see real upset potential. I think the money line is at least worth a shot in a game like this, Kiev. There are different things that could happen in a game like this where if Beekman and them start having a really big game from the guard position, certainly they could win and cover. But I see instances in which Furman could win this game. Money line price, almost plus 200. Yeah, somewhere in that range. So I think Furman could win. This is one of those 13 seeds that has a chance to win a game outright. Mike Bothwell, a really good player for Furman as well. They have a couple stars on the roster. To me, this Furman has a shot in this game. And the fact that Virginia plays at a slower pace, plays a ton of close games, it leads to variance. It gives people a chance. So I think Furman, if you're looking to be the sharp guy who picks a underdog to win outright or maybe even win a game or two in the NCAA tournament, I think Furman, you could do a lot worse than Furman.
Yeah, you certainly can. And it's funny when you said overseeded. If you look at Haslametrics, he has Virginia's Furman game, and he goes by the number of the top team. Houston's number 1. He has it second to last. And then you have teams like Maryland at 19, Auburn at 23, Texas A&M at 24, Arkansas at 27. Basically, all these games are teams that should have been seated higher, according to him, just on strength, right? If you not go by most deserving and things like that, record quality, that this is not that great of a team. I played Furman, Kyle. And I like Furman in this game for sure.
Nice.
I think Hazlitt has this as a 4-point spread, and he's right. This Virginia team has been absolutely bleeding. And the Vanderplas injury, why is nobody talking about this? I was handicapping this game last night when the lines came out, and I was like, 6'8" forward, 5 rebounds per game. He's a big part of them. Furman can give this team fits. And it's one of those where Virginia could be looking past them a little bit. You saw what happened with the same coach when they were the number 1 seed against the Baltimore Retrievers. That was a pretty interesting game. The only time a 1 seed lost, but this type of play has them very susceptible to teams that can score a little bit. Furman is number 1, Kyle, on KenPom from 2-point percentage. And when that power forward isn't there to block those shots and cause some trouble, just like you said, guys like Slauson at 6'7" should have a field day. This is an upset waiting to happen, possibly. I like Furman.
I like Furman here too, Kiev. I think also there's a couple points about this that are interesting, and I know we'll have to be quicker on some of the other games, but I thought this was a good one to go pretty in depth on. Vanderplas was part of the Ohio team that pulled the upset against Virginia. Then he goes to Virginia, and now he's out for the NCAA tournament. It's funny how the world goes around.
Yeah,
but
yeah, right.
Virginia has no, like you said, you had UMBC, then you had Ohio. It can be done against Virginia. We know it can be done. Furman is a veteran team that's came up just short a few times. Now they're finally in the big dance. I think this is a good one as a bet. I also think this is a good one if you're picking in the bracket contest where you get extra points for the seeds. For the 13 seed winning in the first game, you get extra points. This is a good pick here in a bracket contest.
Yeah, I think so too. It certainly is. And they haven't won a NCAA tournament game since they won it all in 2019. So, there's another little thing to pay attention to. Well, good stuff. Yeah, let's move on then. We have Howard versus Kansas. Kansas is laying 20.5 points. I'm going to see if that's still accurate here. And the total is 145.5. We also have Utah State, Missouri, but I think I just passed them. We'll do that next. Howard versus Kansas. Kyle, what are your thoughts?
Well, this one's hard to get as excited about as the last game we were talking about. I mean, top seeds laying a big number versus a much weaker team have been good unders through the years. The 1 versus 16, the 2 versus 15. These are usually good unders because the team is so far ahead that they kind of let off the gas and you have low scoring last few minutes. Second half unders in games like this could make sense. The question is, how is Howard going to stop Kansas in a game like this? I don't think their defense is in any form the type of defense that you would expect to stop Kansas. They allowed 95 points against Kentucky, 86 against Yale. Belmont scored 96 points on them. It just depends on how much Kansas wants to score in a game like this. Howard had a good season, nice run through the tournament there. I just don't think that Howard has what it takes to stay in a game like this for very long. I think Howard probably tries to slow the pace down, at least for a while, but I don't think that's likely to work. And once you get down big, it's not going to continue for too long. My systems would suggest an underplay here. I don't know if I can do it, Kiev. This is one I still have to think about more. My number projections wise is right about at this total. Like I said, systems wise, it's been good unders, betting those 1 versus 16 under. It's just that Kansas, they're very capable of running and gunning, scoring a lot. And if you look at some of those 1 versus 16s that have gone over the total to kind of buck the trend, Kansas's name shows up quite a bit in games like that.
Well, it really does, Kyle, but maybe you should look at a team total under if that was the case, because I was considering laying the 20.5, 21 with Kansas, because Howard, not only do they play fast, Kansas can play fast too when they want. They're just going to set the pace in this game. Howard ranks 356 in turnovers, 356. It's like, how the heck are you in the NCAA tournament when you rank 356th in turning the ball over 22.9% of your possessions? That's just going to add to Kansas's points more and more and more. I mean, sure, they can shoot the 3-point in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference in the MEAC, but it's a little different shooting against Kansas. I don't think that they're going to score much, and that's what worries me. I wouldn't bet that. I really looked at the total. I'm like, I'm considering that the under might tap in the last 5 minutes of the game when Kansas is running the clock, and so that's what worries me. I would say I usually like first half unders, but I wouldn't bet the first half under in this. I think that Kansas is the right side, but the real play is wait till game day and take the team total under for Howard. So according to according to KenPom, it's going to be 63. That's probably too many points for them, Kyle.
I think that's probably too many points too. And the other thing that you could do is take a live under if there's a lot of scoring early on, thinking that it probably slows down if Kansas gets a big lead, because usually those 1 seeds do want to go ahead and sit some of their guys at the end of the games to get ready for that next round. It's coming up just a couple days later.
Okay. Yep. I totally agree. And it looks like he was looking at Furman plus 750 for the Sweet 16. Not sure if I'm ready to go that far with Furman, but against the Wahoos, definitely like that as an upset. So let's move on to the next game. And that is Utah State versus Missouri. Missouri is plus 1.5 now. The total is 155, a pretty big total. Kyle, why don't you get started on this one?
This total's high, but I don't want to bet the under, Kiev. This is a game where I think the pace will be quick. I think efficiency-wise, both these offenses have been very good. Neither defense is very good. The analytical sites love Utah State. I mean, who has Utah State really beaten? That's good, especially away from home. But they've been impressive in many of their wins in that they won by a large margin. They played pretty well in the Mountain West Conference Tournament. We'd be remiss if we didn't say that the Mountain West has not had success in the NCAA Tournament. And you're going to hear that a lot this week. Whether that's predictive of this year, I think it's fair to debate, but the Mountain West still has some things to prove, certainly. I think this is a great coaching matchup. Odom's a great coach. Gates is a fantastic coach as well. Really fun game. Utah State has not faced full court pressure hardly at all season. Nobody in the Mountain West presses except for once in a while San Diego State does. San Diego State beat them every time they played them. This is a Missouri team that's going to press and try to force turnovers. I think you'll like this one, Kiev. Missouri is first in the country in turnover margin. They've turned the ball over just 357 times themselves. Their opponents have turned it over a whopping 537 times. That's a large reason why Missouri is in this spot. And a team that wasn't supposed to get into the big dance has played their way into it by getting better and better throughout the course of the season. They've won that turnover margin game in and game out. So here they are as an underdog with a turnover margin advantage. I think this total is high for a very good reason, both teams being so efficient. I would bet the over if I had to bet a total here in this game. I lean Missouri in this game, thinking that Utah State has not really proven it that much. I think, to me, you can't lay points with Utah State here in a spot like this, in my opinion. It's just, do you want to take it with Missouri? Missouri plays in the SEC, which is not a great conference by any means, but the Mountain West, like I said, has plenty to prove. I think Missouri will turn over Utah State. Utah State doesn't have an actual point guard. Ashworth is kind of playing point guard, even though he really should be a shooting guard. So I think Utah State's going to turn the ball over a decent amount here, and that will be a problem.
I like Utah State in this game. And it unfortunately goes against that. There's two Mountain West teams I see winning, and they're one of them. Not Boise. I kind of like Northwestern there. San Diego State is favored by 5.5, and we'll get right into that game. But I looked at the numbers here, and besides the turnovers, what you mentioned, Utah has Utah State just has a massive advantage. They're 26 from 3-point land adjusted, while Missouri ranks 247th defending it. The Aggies rank 45th in near proximity shots, while the Tigers 282nd defending it, you know. I mean, I don't know how they're going to rebound the ball here either, because for some reason Missouri, they just can't rebound the ball. 362nd they rank in defensive rebounds, only 234th in offensive rebounds. They play fast, so if they can get the turnovers, that could benefit them, but their defense is just sour. Now I did watch them and I did bet them against Tennessee. I'm kind of glad that they made that nice little run. They had an easy finish to their schedule here, but it's just so many matchups favor Utah State, and I had to play them at the +1 earlier. Now it's kind of moved in my direction some. I like it up to -1.5. If you're going to go past that, I'd probably rather bet the money line. I didn't know I was going to find myself betting on mountain team like this. So I got to tell you, Kyle, I am a little nervous about it. No lies there.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, and the price is definitely different than where you took it at. So that makes a difference because the game should probably be pretty close. I think if you like Utah State, you might also like a Utah State team total over, thinking they're going to get their points. The question is, how many points is Missouri going to score? Like I said, I tend to like Missouri. We usually don't disagree too much, but we will disagree on this one. I think this is a Utah State team that has some nice wins at home. Who have they beaten on the road or on neutral courts? Not very many. You know, Washington State, a decent win, but they're not in the NCAA tournament. A lot of their good wins are at home. They won at UNLV. UNLV didn't have a very good season. The neutral court win over Boise State was probably their best win there in the Mountain West Conference tournament. But I like both of these teams in general, so it's not really me wanting to fade Utah State. It's just I like the fact that they haven't faced pressure, and here they're about to face pressure from Missouri.
Yeah, they're certainly going to get plenty of pressure, and yeah, they did struggle against San Diego State. So if that gets to them, they lost all 3 games against San Diego State. Very close games, 10-point first, then 2-point. Then in the tournament here was a 5-point. So they did hang in pretty tough. You wonder if they grew up from that. We'll see. Let's move on to the next game, and I'm just going to pass on this one. It is Charleston versus San Diego State. I think the spread's good. It just says San Diego State is legit, but Charleston's pretty good, -5.5. This is going to be played in Orlando, total 141. I think the spread's fine, so I'm passing.
I'll just give you a few notes about this one. I think my favorite bet here would be the under if I had to bet something. San Diego State really good at turning games into rock fights. Charleston wants to run, certainly. Charleston's winning games, Kiev, by dominating the boards, also winning the turnover battle. The question is, can they do that against San Diego State? Because San Diego State certainly plays better teams than does Charleston throughout the course of the regular season. In fact, San Diego State 34th strength of schedule and Charleston 305th. I mean, just a massive difference there. Charleston relies on getting out in transition, attacking the basket. Guess which team's really amazing in transition defense? San Diego State.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So I don't know that Charleston's going to get those easy buckets that they're used to getting. So can they score in the half court? I mean, this San Diego State defense is really good. Having said that, though, do I want to trust San Diego State to lay this many points? I don't trust that San Diego State offense. I think Matt Bradley is a good player, but he and the rest of the San Diego State team have been known to take some low percentage shots, especially late in the games. They go through these long scoring droughts. I can't lay this many points with San Diego State. Like I said, my favorite bet here is the under, thinking that San Diego State does ugly up this game.
Yeah, and one more thing, San Diego State on the road shooting 47.5 effective field goal, and Charleston at 50.3. So it's like San Diego State is going some serious scoring droughts, you know. So I like the first half under too. So that is one I circled. I forgot to mention that. So I'll probably be looking at that one a little bit closer. I expect just like you said, transition defense to stop those fast break points. I think that's huge. Let's move on to Princeton versus Arizona. And the spread on this one should be -14.5. It looks like on Betfred. and the total is 154.5, a pretty high total, Kyle. So I'll start on this one. I like how their fans travel. This is in Sacramento, California. I do expect there to be more Arizona Wildcat fans. A lot of people from California actually go to U of A. And I do expect to see a little bit more defense in this Cats team that they showed in the past. I noticed in the tournament, they kind of D'd it up a little bit against UCLA. Now, UCLA, more injury woes, and we'll get to that. But the efficiency sites say minus 13. The spread's 14 and a half. I think because Arizona stepped up their D a little bit, that might be correct. But this is a pretty high total. Princeton has been known to score some points in the past. They shoot pretty well, but I don't think they're going to be in the same class as Arizona at all. And it's just weird. Used to see these spreads being a lot bigger than they are now. I lean Arizona even with the line move. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the problem with Princeton is they haven't played anybody really good to have as a good measuring stick here. I mean, Princeton over the last 2 or 3 years has really not played anybody good in the non-conference slate. So they played Hofstra in the first game at home and lost. They lost to Iona on a neutral. They didn't play anybody else. So I don't know what to make of Princeton. I know they'll want to slow the game down. They don't want anything to do with that track meet that Arizona wants to play. I think Arizona is just too talented, too athletic for a team like Princeton. Arizona's undoing in this tournament eventually will be turnovers, in my opinion. I don't think Kirk Risa and the backcourt are good enough at taking care of the basketball. 18.4% of their offensive possessions end in a turnover. I think it's hard to win an NCAA championship at that rate of turnovers unless your defense is like elite, very, very good. I think Arizona's defense is pretty good, but not elite. Princeton's going to shoot a ton of threes in this game. They really have got to shoot a ton of threes. If they're making their threes, then who knows? You know, if they, it's funny. Steve said I had Arizona winning it all. Hey, don't let me talk you out of it, Steve. But I don't think Arizona will win it all. But
maybe you're not his favorite guy after this now, Kyle.
I'm sorry, Steve. I just went down Steve's power rankings. That's funny. No, I think Arizona's a good team. I think they will win several games here, but I don't think they'll be able to beat everybody with those turnover problems. Will that manifest itself in a game like this? That's good, Steve. So I didn't fall too far down there in the rankings. But no, I think Arizona -8 in the first half, Kiev, is my favorite play here. I think Arizona right from the jump is too good for Princeton. Princeton hasn't played anybody like this. I think it's kind of be a shock to the system. I think Arizona can run away from this Princeton team pretty early. So first half bet on Arizona is what I would bet.
Yeah, certainly don't disagree with that. I mean, sometimes it's just better to cut these spreads in half because they kind of slow walk through the last 10 minutes of the game where they're putting backups in. They're trying not to get injured. And that's important consideration to move forward, rest your guys. So when you're laying these big spreads, that's what you have to watch out for. And we've definitely been booked by that. So yeah, it looks like he's an ASU grad. So he's maybe he's like emotionally betting. So at least if Arizona wins, he at least he gets his bracket money for it. But then he could boo them if they lose. So I know how that goes. Let's go to Auburn. Or Illinois versus Arkansas is the next one. Arkansas is -2.5. The total is 144 in Des Moines, Iowa. Take it away, Kyle.
All right, Kiev, I'm going to be short on this one. Illinois disappointed me a lot this year. I thought they'd be better than they were. I think it's fair to ask at this point, is Brad Underwood a really good coach? I mean, when he was hired, people thought that he was an amazing coach. I'm not saying he's a bad coach, but I feel like Illinois should be better than they've been so far this year. And I kept thinking they would improve, and they just didn't. This is who they are, apparently. Arkansas has high upside with Nick Smith. They haven't consistently been good either. This is not a game I'm interested in betting. So I don't know if you have anything on this one, but I'm passing here.
Yeah, I don't disagree with passing on this. I thought Matthew Mayer was going to really make this team a lot better, and I lost some money on Illinois this year for sure. It's a messy game in my opinion. It's almost like these two teams kind of deserve each other by the way they finished it out. I mean, Arkansas lost 4 of their last 5 games, 6 of their last 9. Illinois lost 3 of their last 4 games, 6 of their last 10. Neither team's good away. Arkansas is probably the correct favorite, but they don't shoot free throws. They're ranking the high 200s. It's like, are you going to back a small favorite if they can't shoot free throws? Heck no. You know, Fall City is going to put Illinois right back into it. Plus, they'll hit a 3 or something. There's nothing good in this game to bet on. Probably 144 is probably good too. Let's pass on this one. Move on to the next. And this is also another debacle because we have another 2 teams, Auburn versus Iowa. And more disappointment this year. Iowa +1. The total is 152.5 in Birmingham, Alabama. So I made a play on this, and it's a small one, Kyle. It's in Birmingham, okay? I mean, what is that, 100 miles from Auburn? You know, it's kind of the first thing that I noticed. Iowa, by the numbers, has advantages in near proximity, but Auburn's got advantages for 3 points, mid-range, and near proximity off that terrible Iowa defense. Auburn has done well on neutral courts a little bit earlier this season. So, and for the fact that it's almost like they're at home, and Iowa's just been so pathetic away. I think it's not their year. I think Auburn probably shows up this game. I took them at the -1 for just a small play at 1.5 stars.
Kiev, I'd like to bet against both of these teams, but they're playing me against each other. So unfortunately, I can't do that. Iowa, Fran McCaffrey hasn't been very good in March of late in general. You know, his teams that have been expected to do well at Iowa haven't made a good run. They're not good enough on defense. Auburn isn't very good. They're 353rd as a metrics and consistency, and Iowa's 343rd. I mean, yuck. What an ugly game. This is not one of my favorite games by far. I'm off this game. Like I said, I would have wanted to fade both of these teams. I think if I had to pick, I would pick Auburn. So I kind of agree with your small player there on that one, but I'm going to pass here.
All right, good stuff. Let's move on to a crazy game, and that is maybe the best game to watch in the first round. Oral Roberts versus Duke. Duke -6.5 here. Let me just double check that on the Betfred odds screen. And why they don't have it up on here for some reason. I'll have to look at another one. Yeah, 6.5 it is on DraftKings. The total of this game is 146. So I think the total of this game tells a story a little bit, Kyle. 146 isn't like what you would have thought that Duke and Oral Roberts would be. Now, Duke has slowed it down. They're not the same Duke they were, but Oral Roberts is such a fast-paced, high-flying, high-shooting team. It's really weird how this set up because I think everyone wanted to pick Oral Roberts before they got seeded against Duke.
Yeah.
Duke is much better than everybody in the ACC. When they were hurt was when I was fading them without a couple of their guys, and Filipowski pretty much had to carry them the whole time, you know. And when Duke got back Roach, when they got back Dariq Whitehead, they're almost out at like the same. Like, soon as one got healthy, the other one went out. It was just a bad situation for them. After they were both back, they just started kicking butt, you know, and they won a ton of games in a row. And they just showed me like, wow, this Duke team ranking number 24th in defensive efficiency, even with the injuries. They're starting to hit their threes again. Filipowski's a stud. My number 7. I have them -7. I think that Connor Vanover, the 7'5" dude, is great against these little guys, but Filipowski is the best 7-foot athlete in all of the NCAA. I mean, he's the athlete that's going to take Vanover. He's going to rough him up a little bit, and I think that's going to go a long way. Duke really, I hate betting on them, Kyle. I hate picking them, but I feel the bracket set up really well from them. especially if Zach Edey gets in foul trouble. You know how the whistles are in this tournament. I think Duke gets to the Sweet 16. I bet them at plus 180 to get to the Sweet 16. And I think that's a good bet because they don't have to play Purdue until the Elite Eight anyway. You know, Oral Roberts is probably going to be a trendy pick, but Oral Roberts, when they stepped up in competition, lost by 8 to St. Mary's, lost by 40 to Houston, lost to Utah State. Didn't beat anybody but Liberty, I guess. But don't get me wrong. I like Oral Roberts, and they can only score when they're going fast. They're playing a serious big team now at Duke. I think that Duke handles them.
Yeah, I would have thought that Oral Roberts had a decent chance to win the first game outright. And then I saw who they were seated against here and immediately questioned that, certainly. Duke, Kiev and I, neither one would be considered Duke fans. I'll say that to start with. So we would want to go against Duke if possible. And I mean, as a fan, I would root for Oral Roberts in a game like this. But money is more important than rooting as a fan. And Oral Roberts, everybody talks about Vanover, and he's been fantastic for Oral Roberts this year. But Vanover's 7'5", 225 pounds. I mean, he is not strong. He's very tall, very long. Duke has plenty of big guys. I think they're going to go at him and try to get him in foul trouble in a game like this. It would surprise me if they don't. Also, it's concerning to me that 90% of the money is on Oral Roberts here. It's like people are just saying Oral Roberts is going to cover easily. 39% of the bets on Duke. This one fits several of the angles that we talked about, Kiev. This is a Duke team that's very rarely bet against by the public, but so many talking heads say Oral Roberts to the Sweet 16. Oral Roberts, they're too good. Max Asmus, they're so fun to watch. I think Oral Roberts is a good team, but Filipowski is tremendous. I mean, he's playing really, really well. Duke comes into this game with a ton of momentum. I think Vanover is not as effective in this game as some people think he will be. And I think this is a Duke team that is playing far better than what their rankings would suggest for the course of the season. Like you said, Jeremy Roach was out for a good while. He's very important to this team. I think Duke has a very real chance of even getting to the Final Four in this bracket. Kiev, maybe a spoiler here, but I don't even know that they'll play Purdue. I think Purdue might even lose before they get to that point. So we'll see. But I think Duke has a pretty good setup here.
Yeah, I think this bracket sets up well for Duke or Marquette. Memphis is going to be a tough out for Purdue if Memphis beats FAU. So that could be your turnover margin one for FAU actually on that game as well. But I think that if Edey's in foul trouble, and you're right, I think Duke could play it smart to go right at Vanover. And Duke's 3-point defense is 21st in the league, and that's how they're going to stop Oral Roberts. They're not going to let him get open threes, those easy ball screens coming off the screen or catch and shoot ones. I think Duke's going to be all over that, and they've seen plenty of that in the ACC. So I like Duke here for sure. I'm not going to bet them, but I did bet them to go to the Elite Eight. The Sweet 16 and the Final Four. So I like that. Let's move on to the next game. And we have Colgate versus Texas. Texas is minus 14, total 147. What do you have, Kyle?
Let's think about the last 3 times that Colgate's been in the NCAA tournament, Kiev. So the last 3 times they've been in the tournament, 2019 against Tennessee, they led in the second half of that game. They did lose. They led in the second half of the game. 2 years ago against Arkansas, they led for most of the game. I mean, they were winning the majority of that game, and then Arkansas kind of got them with their pressure later in the game. And then last year against Wisconsin, Colgate did lead in the second half of that game as well. Colgate is a very well-coached team. I think Langle is a tremendous head coach. This is a Colgate team that is going to be very well prepared. The question is that enough? Because Texas is so athletic, physical, very well-balanced team. I tend to think that Colgate can hang around at least for a while, but I don't know that I want to bet them to cover the full game here. So maybe Colgate first half would be a lean for me. This one also fits the higher seed with a pretty big spread, take the under, which has been a good angle to go in the past. Having said that, I think Colgate can score. I don't know that Colgate can defend Texas well enough. So it's one of those where the system would say bet the under. I don't think I can bet the under in this game. Colgate first half, maybe, but nothing strong for me here.
Well, I did take plus 15 when it opened, and it's now down to 14 and 13 and a half. And, I heard a couple other shows, Gil Alexander, a couple other ones say they would rather take Colgate the first half. I get that point, but Texas blows some leads themselves. And I hate to go against the trend, but I like the over 147. Texas gives up points from three.
Yeah.
They rank 97th in defending it. Colgate's the number one 3-point shooting team in the nation at 40.9%. I think they could really put Texas into some trouble if Texas is sleeping a little bit. Texas is a little fat and happy from winning the Big 12 tournament. Now, Texas has the easiest 1 seed for sure, and that, of course, also depends upon Sasser. If Sasser is going to be injured or not for Houston. He's injured with his groin. Something's wrong there. So I think Texas has the most winnable 2 seed to get far, but they also have the hardest 15 seed in Colgate, in my opinion. And it's easy. Colgate's a really good team. I think they step it up a little bit. I think this total gets past, Kyle. I like it over 147.
Yeah, I do want to say that the system would say take the under. I don't want to take the under. In fact, I do think that the over is probably the better bet here, just because I think Colgate will give up a lot of points, but I think they can score enough from 3 as well. So we'll see where this line goes as far as the total. It'll be interesting to see throughout the week, because I know some people just blindly bet those systems. That's why it should only be part of your handicap, though.
Yeah, for sure. And now going by your hat, Kyle, I think it's time for a Big Ten versus Mountain West game. Boise State versus Northwestern. Northwestern minus 1.5. Total is 128. This is played in Sacramento, California. I mean, I struggled with this one a little bit. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd be hammering Northwestern, but they lost 4 of their last 5 games. There's so Jekyll and Hyde on offense. Boo Booey's probably their best player. Well, maybe he's not. Maybe it's Chase Audige is their best player. I've been back and forth on that. I think Audige is kind of taken over a little bit there, but he's a defensive guy. And if Audige isn't hitting, Boo Booey can be cold as heck from shooting. I don't think Boo Booey's all that great of a shooter. And now I did take Northwestern as a flyer way early when they were on a nice little run to make this Final Four at 30-1. I'm not sure if I love that bet no more. But Boise State is a very, I feel, an overrated team a little bit. They stepped it up big at home, just like everybody in the Mountain West. But when they go away, they're losing to San Jose State. They lost to Utah State bad. They had to go to overtime against UNLV, which completely burned my under ticket, as you remember. Then they lost on the neutral against Utah State, which, if you kind of like Missouri, they lost to Utah State by 10. What does that say? I wouldn't bet Boise State here in this situation. I think Northwestern wins. I think it could be a very close game. Am I there to lay the minus 1.5? Not really. I think I would lean it, but I'm not. I don't need to.
No, I don't want to bet side on this game. If I were forced to, I guess I'd probably bet Northwestern, but I just don't think there's a reason to try to look for a angle to bet a side on this one. Both of these teams are far better on defense than they are on offense. I think this is going to be one of those grinders where neither team gets good shots. Boo Booey is one of those players that he could score 35 points, or he could shoot 20 times and score 5 points. A very streaky shooter. He's a good player for sure. And I think most people would say he's their best player. But like you said, Audige is definitely a very good defender, good shot blocker, also gets a lot of steals, very versatile player. So to me, if you look at Northwestern over the last couple weeks, maybe last month, you look at their totals. I mean, they've had some very low scoring games played to a very slow pace. Even their games that went into overtime, Penn State and Penn State again, obviously 133 and 132 points in overtime. And we'll talk about Penn State more, but Penn State's a good offensive team. So to have that low of a scoring game against Penn State says quite a bit. I think this will be a very slow-paced game. I would bet the under if I were betting this game.
I wrote first half under, so I might be. It's 59, and I hate it when it gets to the fives, but
Yeah,
it doesn't mean it's not the right side.
right.
It does not mean that. It's 128 right now for the full game. Foul City would worry me a little bit with that lower of a number.
Overtime
So
also possibly.
yeah, because if it's a very close spread, then that could certainly happen. So let's move on to the next game. Northern Kentucky versus Houston, minus 19 and a half, total 123 pass. I think Houston's very fraudulent, even with Sasser, but throwing the Sasser injury, we don't know what the heck's going on here. I'd almost think, if I knew Sasser was out, I'd probably bet ugly Northern Kentucky team that wasn't even the 1 seed in the Horizon League. And I really thought it was going to be Youngstown State coming out of that. But either way, I'm not betting Houston money 19 and a half, and I'm passing.
Kiev, you and I disagree about Houston. I think Houston's better than you do. One of the few things we disagree about. But if Sasser's playing, I think Houston is a Final Four team if he's healthy. This is a Houston team that's very complete, in my opinion. One reason I don't like Northern Kentucky in this game, Northern Kentucky can't get a defensive rebound. They can't get a defensive rebound to save their life. This is a Houston team that's going to play volleyball on the offensive glass here. It's going to be ridiculous how many offensive rebounds they get in this game.
They rank fourth as it is.
I'm telling you, Kiev, I think they might get back half their shots in this game. I mean, it's good. Half their missed shots are probably going to be offensive rebounds. So it's one of those where really slow pace of maybe 59 possessions or something really low. You'd think, well, you can't lay this many points. But I don't think Northern Kentucky is going to score very many points, and they can't get defensive rebounds. So I'm not taking Northern Kentucky. I know that. For me, it's either lay the points with Houston, and I don't want to lay the points with Houston unless I know Sasser's healthy. So we'll see about that. But lay the points with Houston or pass. And again, this would fit an under angle being a big spread. The question is, can you take this low of an under when one of the teams can't get a defensive rebound? And to me, that's awfully tough to do.
Northern Kentucky team total under, probably, once again. We seem to default to that a lot, but if it's hot, it's hot, man. It's like, you're right. They're not going to get a defensive rebound, and they're not going to have the ball much. It doesn't sound like it, So I'll write that down and take a look at it when it comes out. A lot of these are going to be shaded to the under. Just keep that in mind. These books ain't dumb. All right, let's move on to the next game. We have Louisiana versus your boy Rick Barnes in Tennessee. Kyle, your favorite guy. I mean, you know what's funny? It's 10 and a half. The total's 136. Is Louisiana really that good here? This is a situation where I think maybe Tennessee does pull it together for one game, and the Ziegler injury now is starting to age some. They should be figuring it out now a little bit more without the point guard. I think they played probably 3 or 4 games without Ziegler. There's got to be a point where the Vols just lay it on somebody. I would think it probably would be this game, and then they completely go back to Fade City the next. So I would lean the small spread on a Tennessee team that at one point was the number 1 seed. And I'm not a big Louisiana guy, but man, it's really tough to bet on Rick Barnes, Kyle.
Yeah, I don't think you'll believe that. I cannot believe so many people are picking Louisiana to win outright here in this game. I saw on TV so many people saying Louisiana over Tennessee right away. Who has Louisiana played and had success against that would make us think they'd beat Tennessee? I mean, it's Rick Barnes, and he's the worst coach when it comes to ATS. 8-19 against the spread, NCAA tournament dating back to 2006. And in general, at the end of the year, from game 22 of the season on, 39% against the spread. So I don't trust Rick Barnes. Nothing personal against him. It's just, his teams haven't been able to do it. And at the same time, Louisiana, Jordan Brown's really good for Louisiana, but who else on their team? I don't think he has nearly enough help. Tennessee has plenty of big guys on the inside. You play Sun Belt teams. Jordan Brown dominates in the front court. Louisiana played a weak non-conference schedule. They lost by 12 to Drake, by 28 to Texas. I think Tennessee wins here. I don't want to lay points with Rick Barnes, Kiev, so I'm not going to lay the points. But I'm definitely not taking Louisiana plus the points here. And looking ahead, I would definitely like Duke against Tennessee in round 2. And I honestly think Oral Roberts would have a chance in that game as well. So Tennessee for one game, and then make sure you don't trust Rick Barnes for 2.
All right, I'm glad we're on the same page here, but it looks like I'm not Steve's other favorite guy no more because I just hated on Houston and he had them against the Arizona Wildcats, so that didn't go well. Hey, I have some advice. Fill out multiple brackets. There you go. Oh, man, I got to tell you, this next game, Penn State versus Texas A&M, it's just like you said. I believe Texas A&M was seeded wrong too. I think they're better than their seed, but Penn State might be better than their seed too. What do we say about the tournament, Kyle? It's for guard play, and the Big Ten, I've never seen such bad guard play in the Big Ten in my life than I have this year. But there is one guard that outshined everybody, and it's Penn State's was it Jalen Pickett? Yeah, Jalen Pickett. Yeah, it's just left my mind for a second. I have to pull up their team here. So yeah, he's been amazing, and part of the reason why they made such a good run, beating Northwestern in overtime, Indiana, and then really Purdue almost blew that game. I don't know what Matt Painter was thinking. I was watching. I was like, I had plus 7.5, plus 8 on Penn State, and I thought that thing was toast when they were down 6-8. Going, into Plinko range. And then all of a sudden Purdue almost gives the game away. I'm like, my plus 8's looking good now. My money line might actually come through with my little dabble I played on that. But going back to Penn State, they don't care about rebounding on offense. They seem to be a defensive-oriented team. Now, I've seen them speed up in the past, but it's just so weird to see Penn State being so red, 362nd in offensive rebounds. Man, rebound the ball, some guys. Seth Lundy, get your butt in there. They're not that tall like they used to be down low. They're actually kind of a short team. And that's why, Zach Edey was having a field day for most of their game. But Texas A&M's not all that tall either. They got Marble. That's really about it. They're a bunch of 6'5", 6'6" guys, similar to Penn State. They're a very gritty team, and they're well put together. But Texas A&M doesn't shoot the ball that well either. They play a little bit faster, but they seem to care a little bit on defense to get back enough to slow down the other teams. So I know they're not rebounding on defense a little bit, but I would probably look towards the under in this one, Kyle. I didn't make a play on it. If this thing gets a little bit more out of hand, I might have to play Penn State, but I'm going to lean to the under. What are your thoughts?
I don't have anything strong here in this game that I really want to bet that much. Tennessee's a really efficient offense. They don't play quickly. They do make shots. Jalen Pickett is tremendous. He's very, very good. Third in the country in assist rate, shoots 38.3% from three-point range. Penn State's 13th in effective field goal percentage offense. Texas A&M relies really heavily on getting to the free throw line. Penn State defends without fouling very well, so something has to give. Which will that be? I'm not sure. I think this number is too low for me to take an under. I think the pace should be an under pace, but I'm worried that Penn State's too good on offense and not that great on defense. 101st in defensive efficiency. I think Penn State's trying to get back instead of getting those offensive rebounds, but their defense still really hasn't been very good. So maybe they should try for some more of those offensive rebounds. I think I lean toward Penn State plus the points because I think both of these teams are underseeded. Texas A&M got an unfortunate draw to be playing this good of a team in round 1, certainly. And my lean would be Penn State, but nothing too strong. And my number is higher than this for the total. I think in general, Penn State games have been pretty good over bets just because of their efficiency. Texas A&M has slowed down at the end of the year, and we've seen them come in under quite a bit. There's a lot of conflicting things in this game to where I think this is a better game to watch than it is to bet.
It is pretty conflicting by how Penn State is efficient, but they don't get the rebounds. Yet Texas A&M gets a ton of offensive rebounds, yet plays bad defense, plays good defense, but doesn't rebound on defense. Yeah, it's all over the board, really. So I would lean the points with Penn State, but it wouldn't shock me if A&M beat them by a decent margin. This Penn State team is just so bad down low, and that was their problem. And when I said lean the under, I wish this is the one I complained to you about, Kyle. I'm like, what the heck's going on? The 134.5, Ken Palm's got it 140. And we both know that Ken Palm is a little bit shaded to the higher totals, and we think that's a mistake. Haslametrics is a little bit lower on this, which is more correct. I didn't look at what Torvik has it, but it's important to know that definitely Ken Palm is not the Bible, and the market is telling you that in a lot of these games. Final game, Kyle, North Carolina, Asheville versus UCLA. Why don't you take this one first?
Yeah, Kiev, I hate that UCLA is so banged up injury-wise. Full transparency, I was going to take UCLA to win the bracket if they didn't get banged up. I like UCLA a lot. I think Jalen Clark means quite a bit to the team. Adem Bona status is not clear. He's not 100%.
It's not looking good.
Yeah, it's not looking good. I mean, and we saw against Arizona, UCLA wins that game if they're healthy. Arizona was fortunate to win the game even with UCLA banged up. I think Arizona led for like 55 seconds of the second half, but it happened to be right at the end of the game. UCLA is a good team. I really like their defense a lot. And Jaquez is tremendous. I think he's still underrated. I know people know he's very good, but he is fantastic. So how about Jaquez here versus UNC Asheville star big man Drew Pember? That's going to be a fun matchup. Pember has not played against people as good as Jaime Jaquez, that's for sure.
No.
It's going to be a lot of fun to see how that goes. I think Drew Pember is talented enough from UNC Asheville that he may even be able to make an NBA roster in the future. What can he do in a game like this? Because he's not used to playing against teams that's good. I don't know. Like I said, at 100% full strength, I think UCLA could have won the NCAA tournament. I can't pick them to win it now. I do think they're a very good team. Their defense is fantastic. They don't give up open shots. I think UNC Asheville has a really hard time scoring in a game like this. So my favorite bet in this game would be UNC Asheville team total under.
Okay, team total under. I actually like, unfortunately, UNC Asheville at a larger number that I played a little bit. And you said it right there, Drew Pember. I mean, he'd be a stretch 4 in the NBA, wouldn't he? I mean, he's shooting 37.6% from three. He made 56 out of 149. That's pretty good for a 6'11 dude. But not only that, he's playing 84.7% of the minutes. How often do you see a big guy like that playing all those minutes? But they also have another 6'8 guy in Nick McMullen. He plays, almost 60% of the game. So they do have some size. And just like you said, man, with Bona out, now you lost 2 defensive guys, kind of. It's like, how many more guys can UCLA bleed here? I think UCLA wins. Yeah, this is one that I really wouldn't necessarily sprinkle any money line on, but UNC Asheville, I think they keep it within 15. I just think that 19 was a little too much, so I took it. I'd still take it at 17.5, probably down to 15.5 or something like that, just for a small play for a couple stars. I just think you got to attack UCLA a little bit now that they're injured, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a shame UCLA wasn't at full strength because there could have been some epic matchups there in that bracket. That's a loaded bracket, by the way. So that'll be a fun one as it is. But UCLA laying that many points, I wouldn't be interested in laying that many points either. My concern would be UNC Asheville plays a weak schedule throughout the course of the season. They stepped up and played at Dayton, lost by 23, lost to Arkansas by 34 points. So I don't know. They did beat UCF, a pretty good team on the road. So uh, I don't know. I don't want to bet a side on this one. Like I said, I think I would lean under for the game overall, but probably would have liked the under better if UCLA was at full strength.
Yeah, that UCF game was the first game of the season too. I always like to cross them off. Yeah, it's almost like this Asheville team got a lot better, I think, just because the margins that they were beating their teams with was a pretty good amount until kind of Campbell gave them a little bit of a run, I guess, in the Big South tournament. But yeah, I just thought it was a few too many, and I could be eating my words. Maybe UCLA does come out and explode them a little bit, but maybe look to the under two a little bit and. Like you said, the team total under, just because they get a team total under, that could hit and they could cover. So you never know in those situations. Yeah. Thank you everyone for commenting. Kuma Ryu, Steve W. We didn't even like announce we were doing this, but you guys came in anyway and supported us. So really want to give you guys a shout out and thank you for commenting, and it always makes it a lot funner when you do so. So really appreciate that. But Kyle, before we go, is there any, and like, obviously we went through a full slate of Thursday games, anything for Friday that kind of stuck out to you?
Yeah, man. I'm impressed at the people who tuned in here on this late night edition, especially for the East Coasters, like myself. But I'm a night owl, so it didn't bother me. This is a loaded slate of games on Friday. I'm looking forward to hearing your input on some of the Friday games too. I mean, everybody's betting Kent. Everybody and their mom and dad are all betting Kent against Indiana. What could possibly go wrong? I do think Kent is a good team. So we'll see. And I don't like Indiana very much, but I think the game that probably interests me the most as far as the side that I'd be interested in would be Iona and UConn. This is an Iona team that I know Rick Pitino is a good head coach, but Rick Pitino is just a little over 500 in the NCAA tournament in his career. So let's not make it sound like he's just going to be a miracle worker or something. And Rick Pitino is probably leaving really soon from Iona, right? So I mean, I think everybody knows that Rick Pitino is like the top option of so many other people. Some of his comments would suggest that he's probably leaving here pretty soon. Iona stepping up in class in a big way against UConn. This is a fun game where it's going to be played at Albany. I think I would lay the points there with UConn. UConn laying the points against an Iona team that people will talk up a decent amount throughout the course of the week. More than half the bets are on them. 66% of the money's on Iona. We'll see if the line goes down a little bit more, but I like UConn in that one.
No disagreement with me there. I think they can cover, and I still think this game can go under as well. I think UConn's going to choke them out pretty much defensively, and that's what UConn's so great at. I think UConn is incorrectly seeded at the 4 seed. I think they should have been a 2 seed with their strength. They're ranked number 4 in KenPom. They're in the top 5 in most metric sites. They have their hiccup in the middle of the year? Sure, everybody really did this year. There's no outstanding number 1 team in my opinion, but I love how they rank number 18th in defensive efficiency and opponent effective field goal percent. UConn is number 11. They can rebound the ball. They just when they're on, they're on. And in case they might be a little off, it leans towards the under a little bit more. Now I know Iona speeds it up, but they're not going to be able to speed it up against UConn when they step up in competition here. To a team like UConn, I think that they can't get the running, and it's an NCAA tournament game. So I took the under. I got a little line value on it. I think I took it at 144.5. It's 143 right now. So I would still lean to the under in that one, Kyle.
The other thing I'd point out, Kiev, about that is UConn being a 4 seed is pretty crazy when you think about the fact that if UConn plays Kansas on a neutral, I think UConn's favored over Kansas, the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
So UConn's a really good 4 seed. I think a fantastic 4 seed. So Iona, they're up against it in that one, in my opinion. And I think UConn could be overlooked by some people. Fantastic region down there with Kansas, UConn, UCLA, Gonzaga. That one will be a lot of fun.
That's right. And Kay Neal, yes, you're right. After this podcast, I'm going to be late night looking at some lines as well. I'm going to be finishing up here. I still got to go through quite a few Friday games for tomorrow's show with Steve Perry from Shot Quality. So we are just going every day here at the Odds Breakers. But so is Kyle. Always has some great information. Always has some fun stuff going on in the tournament. What's going on over there at Hunter Sports Picks?
Yeah, you can check out all my work there at huntersportspicks.com. You can sign up for the free picks newsletter. We'll be sending out several free plays. Also, follow me at on Twitter at Kyle Hunter Picks. I put up a March Madness betting information angles thread, which is taken off here pretty nicely. I'm going to be adding to that throughout the week. I like looking for these angles and trends, and I know other people have found them helpful. So I'll keep adding to that throughout the week and throughout the tournament. You can find my March Madness pass there at huntersportspicks.com as well. And 28-10, last 38 plays. So we'll see if I can keep it going here throughout March. And I know last March, both Kiev and I had a really nice March. So hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah, let's repeat that, baby. And yes, you're right. Kyle is an amazing Twitter follow. Make sure you check us out at theoddsbreakers.com. We have a guy working on every single quadrant, giving out some free plays, giving out some leans, maybe trying to find some information that's not quite out there yet. We always try to tweet that out as well. Some of the retweets with some of the injury information, these UCLA injuries, these Kansas injuries. There's some Houston injuries out there. Always got to be mindful of them when making bets from an offensive angle and a defensive angle. But check us out, the Odds Breakers. We have all that information for you, and we have our March Madness Tournament Challenge. Make sure you get in that, baby. It's free. $500 we are giving away of prizes. Thank you guys so much for chiming in. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the week and go get some winners.